and I kept setting the cruise, and it's got a thing to like set the distance, the follow distance. Okay, so that was our lane departure warning, but it doesn't correct it. And it is not active cruise, because I kept thinking like, man, this thing is getting pretty close, the car's in front. And it was not active cruising. It was just, it was, you know, a regular cruise control, which is fine. But, you know, there are vehicles that, at this price level, like I think even a loaded CR-V, stuff like that would have that, especially loaded RAV4, RAV4 hybrid, things of that nature. So that could be something that you might miss. Other things you might miss, like heated seats, or excuse me, we have super heated seats with 3-mode settings, but we don't have cooled seats. We also we have a $1,000 moonroof, but it's a single pane. It's not a giant panoramic moonroof, which definitely feels like better value for me than shelling out a grand for just a regular moonroof. The moonroof is kind of noisy, by the way, when it is open. Yes. But not a big deal. And what other stuff might we wish for? So we don't have shift paddles, which I think would be helpful, particularly because this transmission, I should have mentioned this earlier, but sometimes it doesn't upshift like very obediently, like it holds onto revs like too long. You know, when you're on absolutely full throttle, it's fine. Okay, but there it kind of did it. But when you're like at 3/4 throttle, it just needs to shift. It just doesn't shift as quickly as I would prefer. And there also aren't any drive modes for the controls. I mean, you have traction control off, or you have the M setting where you can select gears with the toggle, but you really don't have like any kind of like sport type of mode. And I think that would be really beneficial, particularly for this terrain Denali, which on these 19-inch wheels with the dual flow dampers really feels like you could do some fast driving in the car. But as a result of like really low and really slow steering, I mean, the steering is slow, which most people will like. I mean, most people like it. It makes them feel like the SUV is like safer and is not going to be, you know, darting from lane to lane. But for me, I would rather have a little bit of a quicker rack, just because sometimes I would catch myself going around corners and like I hadn't turned the wheel far enough. I mean, it seems like ridiculous, but so all of a sudden I'd be like, oh my god, you know, I gotta crank the wheel more. So that's like something where it's just it's a matter of getting accustomed to the car versus like an issue for the vehicle itself. Another thing you will want to get accustomed to is like the brake pedal travel and the accelerator travel are really deep. They're like, I mean, there's a lot of travel there, and it's all like informed, you know, it's sort of like giving different levels of throttle or brake, of course, but there's just a lot more that you have to push on versus some other modern SUVs with electronic controls for you know, steering and throttle by wire, which are generally like a little more precise. So this one's like a little baggy when you first get in, like you really have to, you know, step on the brakes. But once you do, and once you get a hang of this car, I mean, you can really chuck it around. It's pretty quick. It's generally just, it's a very easy and lovable truck. So onto its real ace in the hole. This car is huge inside. I mean, it's not going to be easy to show you on the video how huge the truck is, but it's huge. It has a really enormous back seat, and with that actually slides fore and aft to provide different cargo or leg room, and also has recline settings. It's huge back there. I mean, this, for the price, you cannot get a bigger SUV back seat in the second row. The trade-off is that there is no third row, and it's also like, you know, there isn't like great stuff back there. Like there are 4 at least that I've counted cigarette lighter like charger units in the vehicle, here, under here, in the back of the console, and then in the trunk. So that's awesome, but in the back there aren't, like, you know, it doesn't have its own specific vents or controls of any kind of infotainment, or, I mean, if that stuff is just informing you, just letting you know that it doesn't have little venties back there. So that's like kind of a cheap touch, but overall, I mean, I don't think it's going to really affect your quality of ownership. And the fact that the terrain is a phenomenal, is right sized, is compact and really easy to drive and park in any city, but is also, you know, just sort of gigantic. It can tow. It's got, you know, we got all-wheel drive with like really unstickable and rapid torque transfer to the back axle. it's just sort of it's really just objectively a superb machine. You know, what do you pay for this excellence? So obviously the Terrain Denali, you know, as we mentioned, this exact vehicle came in with a base price of $35,725, and from there we added a bunch of options like the V6 engine for $1,500, moonroof, the color, touchscreen $400, and then like some cargo crap and tow bar for like another $500 or $600. And from there we have our as delivered price of $41,315. So okay, that definitely seems like a lot, but okay, here's all right, yeah, it's a lot. It's 41 grand. But you know, earlier this year tested a Toyota Avalon Limited with front wheel drive that came in at like 52, or a Lincoln MKC that was like 63. So I mean, these cars are getting really expensive, and I think that a lot of what we've touched on here and discussed about the vehicle's great rolling refinement, good style, excellent cabin room, blah blah blah, all that stuff really applies to all of the trim levels. So the Denali is really just is your best bet if this is the size you want and you just want it to be as plush with every standard feature as possible. And from there, the Denali is like always, you know, a really good shortcut to achieving that most loaded GMC on the road. So overall, GMC Terrain Denali all-wheel drive V6 for 2016, a solid B+, maybe like an AB. The only things that would stop me from giving it like a full A is like sort of like some curious transmission and steering stuff that I feel like could be improved. But otherwise, I mean, in terms of a solid vehicle that's huge, is pretty efficient, pretty parkable, pretty useful in 4 seasons. I mean, you really, this thing is hard to beat, particularly from its pricing in the mid-20s. All right, this is Tom Burkhart for Car Revs Daily. We'll see you guys next time.